I can't see him falling down my eyes, so I gotta let the song cry. Yeah, right. Who am I kidding? Crying. Like, listen, I know we've all been there holding it in like Mary J. I'm not gonna cry. I got this. But deep down,
Welcome
sometimes those
back.
tears have been building up
I
like a
am
leaky
so
faucet.
excited to
Well,
have you
today we're
here
diving into
for
why
another
crying
episode
is
of
an
Tawana
important part of
Talks.
momming.
I'm
So grab your
tackling
tissues and let's
a
get into
topic
it.
that really hits close to home for many of us, and that's crying. Now, before you start thinking this is going to be a tearjerker, let me assure you it's not. At least I don't think so. That's not my intentions, but we'll see what happens. So, here is my tea. I don't like crying. Like, I don't like seeing other people cry. I don't like crying myself. And if I'm being really real, it's probably because I grew up believing that crying was like a sign of weakness. I was told things like dry it up, never act soft, even man up. Like, are you kidding me? Can you believe it? Hello, I'm a girl. And it's like wild to really think about those things now as I've become an adult and raised children and are still raising and am still raising children. But those messages like really stuck with me and are like almost embedded in me or were embedded in me for a very long time. And these are things that I've said to my children as they were growing up. And let me just be clear here, I am not judging or blaming my parents or anyone else who helped raise me. What I'm doing is really just highlighting some of the things that we were taught when we were young. That just because that's the way it was doesn't mean that's the way that it has to be. I'm grateful for my upbringing and who I've become because of it. And it wasn't really until recently that I realized how strong you have to be to cry. Like, I'm not crying, that's weak. But you really have to be strong to be able to be vulnerable like that in front of someone. That takes a strength because you are really trying your hardest not to do it. And so it really is a strong thing to say, you know what, this is me. Here I am. See me roar or wow. And um, this is a really, really strength here because it takes real guts for those emotions to be out. Have you ever like just sat in front of someone and you really wanted to cry, but you're like, I ain't gonna do it. I ain't gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. And then when you do, how you feel afterwards, that's a strength that not a lot of people, exhibit. And I've spent some time trying to be the strong one. That I didn't even realize I was actually holding myself back from experiencing like a full range of emotions. I was just like, that's not something I do. That's not something that's even necessary. And even worse, as I started to reflect on this, I realized that I was modeling the same behavior for my daughter. And not only that, she's the youngest. I modeled that same behavior for my older children. If I can even think back, my children probably, and this is, you know, tea, so transparency, they probably can count on one hand, maybe two, how many times they've seen me cry in a vulnerable state of like sadness. And that's like outside of, death and a major tragedy. Like I experience those emotions and I feel for those emotions and I feel for others who are going through things like that and having those emotions. But for, everyday life's trials and tribulations and things that you're going through, I'm always like, you know what? Crying is not going to do anything. We got to keep it moving. And so on the times that they can probably count on their hands, it would probably be because of some major life situation that has happened in our life that is the typical thing that you would cry for if you will. And I say typical not to minimize, those types of things. But I say that to say again, this is the behavior that is being modeled because your children look at you. And so now when I'm thinking about my daughter, I'm modeling this behavior until I started to reflect on it. And so I'll share a little bit of a story for you where that kind of turn of event, where I realized it happened. So during the pandemic, I found myself crying more than I ever had before. And I'm sure, actually a lot of people have, because that was a scary time. It was a very frustrating time. And so I don't necessarily know if the crying was because of the emotional state that was happening then, and it may have been, very well been so. But I feel like God even used that to highlight what it is that I'm going to share with you and help me to reflect in that space. And so at first, I was really like, what is happening to me? Like, I thought that it was something spiritual, like a sadness spirit had came over me. And I was like, nah, this can't be real. Like, I cannot be experiencing these times where I just want to cry. Like, this has to go. And even I even thought maybe at some point that it was a form of depression. And I was like, all right, well, I maybe need to seek some clinical help for this. And I just have to pray about this. Like, I'm looking up prayers for it. And when I started sitting, and I realized it was happening every month, and it was around the same time of, that time of the month happening. And that's when I would get sad and cry. And now I know that, being a woman, obviously, that we get a little emotional during that time. So our emotional, let me say emotion. When I say, let me clear that up. When I say a little emotional, because I know what I'm saying, and I know most women would know what I mean, but there may be other people that are listening. Let me be more clear with that. Emotions exhibit themselves in a variety of ways: laughter, sadness, joy, excitement, all of those things. And so sometimes I think that we use the word emotional for just when you're sad, or we use the word emotional because you're exhibiting emotions. I want to normalize the fact that we are emotional because we are humans. So let me clear what I said. Like, during the time of month, it is a known that we will experience a variety of emotions during that time. And sometimes they're a little more extreme than they are when we are not having that time of month. And so I was like, okay, maybe this is for, the time of month, but I had not experienced that before. In my womanness. And so I was like, but why is it so intense now? Like, this is crazy. I am not doing this. And so even through that, I just kind of brushed it off, like, as of like, all right, just got to deal with it. I don't know what it is, but I'll deal with it. And when it happens, I'll just be like, okay, I know what it is. It's because it's that time of month, and I'll just, get through it. And so I like brushed it off like a dysfunctional workaround, like, all right, it'll be there and whatever. I'll never have to address it again. At least I know what it is. And so during that same time, I was like praying for God to allow me to be more vulnerable in his space, like give me opportunities, show me opportunities to be more vulnerable. And there was a sermon that was preached about an ugly cry, and coming to God with that ugly, if you will, self, and having that vulnerable space of like, God can't um, work with the representative that you're bringing him. If you feel like you got it all together, then what would you need God for? So you need to bring that vulnerable, that ugliness to him. And so I was praying about that. And as time went on, and now we're after the pandemic, and I'm going through life situations, and I've shared before in a previous episode about an experience I had at the workplace that I was in, and the environment that I was in, and how I had to get through that. And so during that phase of time, I'm still having these emotional feelings every month. And so I was like, in my prayer time, having that time of like, this crying thing is enough. Like, I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and now it's like, but it's like now more highlighted, if you will. And so in prayer, I felt a move of God, and it was like, hey, it reminded me of the prayer request I had to have that ugly prayer, because even when I felt like I wanted to cry, I felt like I had to schedule it, like for myself. Like I had to put it on the agenda, and it was more like a episode of Friday, like you gonna cry when you get in the car, like type thing. When homeboy's chain was snatched and Debo snatched his chain, it's like he gonna cry when he get in the car. That's what I would tell myself, like you're gonna cry when you get in the car, or you're gonna cry when you get home and get in the shower, or you're gonna close your door and you're gonna cry. It was a scheduled time that I needed to do, secluded, let it out, and then go on about my business, wipe my eyes, and go about my business. And so in this time, as I was having a moment and crying, I was reminded that I had asked for the vulnerable time, asked for the time to be vulnerable with God, the time to have that ugly cry, and that time to be able to come to Him as my full self. And he reminded me that this is it. This is the time. This is the time. As you feel like you have to schedule to cry, I've made it biologically possible and necessary for you to do so. And that was so strong because remember, as I said, I was trying to pray it away. It reminded me that I could not even pray it away. I couldn't get rid of it. It was biologically necessary. And so it was a biological thing that was happening every single month that caused me to feel these feelings, that caused me to be in this crying state, that caused me to have these emotions and be vulnerable in this moment. And so in that time, I had an epiphany thought of like, wow, God, like you've made it biologically necessary and possible for this to happen. And also, it happens monthly. So it's a scheduled time, and it's a reminder that that's my time that I need to really get down on my knees, have that ugly, down and dirty cry with God, to be able to open up that space to get closer to Him and for Him to download what it is that He needs to download to me, but also have that vulnerable, my full self moment coming to God with, here I am, God, this is me. And so in that, that's when that pivoted, that crying is not a sense of weakness. It's not a time that you have to man up, wipe your tears, and only do it in closed spaces. And it's only for a specific time away from things, or a specific time of, if there's a death in the family, or there's a tragic loss, or you're hurt, those types of things. Like crying is human, and it is a part of emotional intelligence. It's something that I've been learning to embrace, especially as I am raising and learning my daughter who is neurodivergent. This is something that I've learned, that there is a space for vulnerability, and that space is crucial, especially when we're raising the next generation. So if you're like me and you've had a hard time letting those tears flow, then this episode is certainly for you. And so I think about a biblical scripture of Psalms 56:8, written by King David. And he says, the you being God, keeps track of all of my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one of them in the book. Look, if God is tracking my tears, then there's gotta be something vulnerable about letting them out. That's the kind of vulnerability I want to model for my daughter and for myself. And I want it to be a space that I provide for her where she feels like she can let it out in front of me, and so that we can process those through. I want her to have a healthy, godly processing so that she doesn't start to filter them and have an incorrect processing, and then have incorrect or non-godly um, processes of developing or moving through life with it. So that's my tea. But just thinking about being a mom, raising a daughter with ADHD, I'm like living in an amusement park. And I don't even like amusement parks. Like, I'm not the one to do crowds, and I'm definitely not the one to ride any type of roller coaster. But my life has been a roller coaster daily, an emotional roller coaster with all the highs and the dips, right? And if you're a mom like me, you've certainly experienced these rides. So like think about it. Have you ever like been there when your daughter hits meltdown mode. Like everything feels like it's right on that track. And then next thing you know, you don't realize that that track, although it seemed like it was going in a straight path, you were kind of like winding up. And then boom, it is a meltdown mode because, like, wait for it. Like, what's the thing? You think of your thing. My thing could be we are out of snacks. And I mean, come on. I am not trying to starve this kid. She packs food like we are planning for a bunker and it is the end of the world. And she's just going outside in the front yard and she has to have enough snacks for the just in case. She thinks about, well, what if I take this and I don't want this? Then I have the next snack. But what if I eat the next snack and I'm still hungry and I want that snack? All of the things. And I'm like, we live right here. Just come back and get the next thing. And so we could be out of snacks, but for her, it is like I have announced the apocalypse and the world is about to end. And she is clutching on the pantry door like it is a last lifeboat in the sinking Titanic. And what do you do? I'm standing there and I'm just thinking, like, it is a granola bar, sis. Get over it. But for her, those emotions hit different. And it's really not about the snacks, honestly. It's more about how intensely she feels everything. Everything. I mean, everything. And 1 minute, she's good. The next minute, boom, it is full on meltdown mode. And if I'm being honest, sometimes I'm right there with her. And I'm on that emotional roller coaster, ready to hop off to the next stop, or really being honest, ready to pop off at the next move. Like, don't judge me. I know that you've been there too. If you are raising daughters, period, and especially when you're raising daughters with ADHD and working through these emotional roller coasters. But here's the thing that I've certainly learned, or I am learning to put my seatbelt on, and I'm learning to ride those waves without puking. And that's just really a mom skill. That's something that you learn when you're just being reflective. And I don't always get it right. Like, I learned to get it right after the fact in most cases, being honest. And it's after the situation has happened. And I was like, dang, how could I have handled that better? What could I have done? What could have been my proactive measure to prepare for the thing that could have happened? Now, it's not always where you could prepare. And when I say prepare, it's not so much prepare for the meltdown not to happen. Yeah, I'm going to run out of snacks. That just happens. That's life. So it's not like I'm on shopping mode, like, okay, got to make sure I get enough, never run out just in case. So, because that's not the way life is. And I want her to understand that life doesn't operate around her. I'm going to do everything that I need to do to create an environment for she can thrive in, but I'll, and that understanding that that environment is an environment that she can thrive in does not necessarily mean that I'm setting up a placated environment. It is an environment for her to also understand that the world is not going to always be so giving. So in an event or in a moment of life where there's something not there that you wanted or even something that you needed, how do you pivot? How do you handle that? How do you emotionally regulate? And so I'm not saying that I'm going to keep snacks on deck, on deck, on deck. What I'm saying is I am going to be proactive in mentally preparing myself and spiritually prepare myself for the possibility and the very real possibility of a meltdown so that I can operate in grace and be able to show her that. And if that is possibly meaning that sometimes I may need to show a feeling that states that it's normal to feel the way that I feel, then that also may be the case. So there it is. There are times when you just have to be able to reflect on that. There are times that you're going to have to be able, to show your daughter and show your children what it is to be human. And that's not even there are times all the time. So sometimes, in those moments or after those like, no, I'm not even gonna say after those moments. Sometimes even in those moments when I'm alone in my room and I stare at the wall, in the back of my mind, I hear my conscience call. And it is my conscience saying, you need to cry. cry now, or you're gonna run away, or even laugh, because then I'm laughing and I'm looking around for Ashton Kutcher and I'm thinking I must be being pranked. Like I have to be being punked right now. Ashton, come out so that we can go ahead and dead all of this. Because really, what else is there to do but laugh? Like that is a survival skill. And in that moment, I am in full survival mode. And I know that if you're listening to this and you've experienced what I'm talking about, that you've done the same thing. And if you haven't, then I am saying do it. But as we move on to just a little bit more serious note, and I laugh and I play fun and games with it because that is really a survival skill to be able to look at yourself and laugh, because life can't be that serious. Even look at, sometimes when your daughter is doing the thing, being able to take a moment and laugh, like, this is not real. Like, this can't be real. And that helps you to, lower your cortisol level so that you can think a little bit more rationally, if you will. Drink a sip of water, like, sip your water, mind your business for real. But seriously, emotional regulation is really key. And for us and for our daughters, we have got to show them that it is okay to feel things deeply and it's okay to express those feelings in healthy ways. If they never see us shed a tear, what are we really teaching them? Like, emotions should be bottled up? Nah, sis. I want my daughter to know that crying is just as normal as laughing. Like I mentioned before, being emotional, we are, because we are humans, and that involves all of the emotions. So if a joke is funny, it is normal to laugh. If you're feeling not so great, then it is also normal to cry. If you see a friend that you haven't seen in a while, it is normal to act with excitement, even jump, run, give a hug, all of those things. If you're afraid, it is normal to scream. So, again, if you are sad or you're not feeling your greatest, it is normal to cry. If you saw a joke, like I mentioned, and you didn't laugh, people will be looking at you like you didn't think that was funny. What kind of sense of humor do you have? So, if something is wrong, we should be looking at people like, why aren't you crying? Like, you should be crying if something is bothering you, and that is okay. And the more we show them that, the better they'll be at navigating their own emotional waves. So if you are not taking some time to do that, and if you have not heard it from anyone else today or ever, let me be the first to say to you, it's okay to cry. Go ahead and let it out. It's natural to cry. It is a part of being human. And if we don't let our kids see that, they might start thinking that something is wrong with them. When they start to feel like they have to cry too, they might go and hide away or feel like, why do I feel like crying? I've never seen anybody else cry. Or I've never seen my mother cry, so something must be wrong with me. So go ahead and get your tissues. Let's pause for a quick commercial break. Hey, listeners. I want to take a moment to tell you about some amazing resources I've got lined up for you. If you're looking to deepen your emotional intelligence and build stronger relationships with your daughters, check out my website. I offer a range of coaching services that are all about empowering you to thrive, whether it's one-on-one coaching or workshops like my upcoming Instagram Thrive Live on September 19th, titled The Confidence Code, Unlocking Your Boldest Self. Sign up now and start your journey towards a more fulfilling and emotionally intelligent life. All right, thank you for staying back on. And so let's talk about like our takeaways from this. Like, what are our takeaways? We all want our daughters to grow up emotionally strong, right? We all want them to be able to stand on their own feet and navigate life's challenges, because life is coming with so many blows. There's highs and there's lows, and life be life, and life is always going to be lifing, but we want them to be emotionally strong through that. But how do we do that? Like, what if we didn't grow up like that, or we didn't learn it ourselves? Like I mentioned, I was told to man up, dry it up, enough is enough. Don't cry, never let them see you sweat, all of those things. But it starts with us. Even if we've not learned it, Even if we've never saw it, that doesn't mean that it has to be that way. We learned not to cry and not to show those emotions through modeling, so we can teach how to through modeling, how to show those emotions through modeling it. It's not easy, right? If it's something that you've not done, it is not an easy task. And so you have to be strong to let yourself feel, and that may mean that there may have to be coupled with some counseling and some coaching to allow yourselves the opportunity to feel, understanding when it's appropriate and where to be vulnerable, and having those spaces on how to be vulnerable in certain spaces, because there's always a level of vulnerability in any space. Some have higher levels of vulnerability and exposure of yourself, and others you don't expose so much of yourself, but you still have a level of transparency and vulnerability. So it may take some therapy and some coaching to help you get to those levels of doing it, but I certainly encourage it, because if we're not modeling this emotional intelligence and showing our children that it's okay to feel, it's okay to cry, it's okay to lean on God, when life gets tough, they're not going to know how to do it either. And we're just going to be perpetuating a system of emotionalist individuals, people who do not feel, people who do not allow themselves to feel, people who look and see like something is wrong with even feeling. And if I feel these feelings, there must be something wrong with me. So therefore, I have to do something else about it. And that's when we get our chemical dependencies and our suicidal rates going up. We have to understand that it is human to feel our feelings. We've got to give ourselves permission to cry. We've got to give ourselves permission to feel, to release. Crying does not make you weak, it makes you human. Coming from me, that is big, because I certainly was like, this crying thing is not for me. I'm not doing this. And more importantly, it makes you a mom who is really in tune with your emotions and can guide your daughter to be the same. Too many times in this world, we hear so many people saying things like even like if someone would cry back in my day, it was like, quit acting like a girl. Like, why is girls associated with crying? Like, it's a human feeling. And so if you are a woman and you are crying, then we need to step on this stigma of, even it's weak, you're a girl, you're being girly, you're crying, oh, that's a girl thing, and all of those types of things, and say no, it's a human thing. If I'm crying about whatever it is I feel the need to cry about. And so when we're experiencing something and new emotions happen, if our daughters are experiencing something, and new emotions happen, it is hoped, it is my hope that my daughter comes to me and that I'm able to guide her through, because I allowed myself to go and grow through it. So when she's beginning to feel these emotions, she can say, hey, mom, I feel like this. And I can be able to say, I've had that experience, or I felt that too, and allow that shoulder to cry on. I don't want to talk her out of feeling her feelings. I want to be that space and let her know that it's okay to feel that. That is a valid emotion if that's the way that you feel because of that situation. So here's my challenge to you. Next time you feel those tears coming, don't hold them back. Like Tony Braxton said, let it go. Let it flow. Let it flow. Let it flow. I wish I could sing it in her lyrics, because it would hit so much better. But show your kids that being vulnerable is really a part of being strong. And when they see you cry, they'll know that it's okay to do the same. And I am learning more and more that emotional intelligence isn't about being strong. It's really about being aware, being vulnerable, and normalizing being okay with feeling all the feels. So let's teach our girls that tears are not just a release, but a way to cleanse and refresh the soul. It's like water, baby. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Whew. If you got your tissue, go ahead and wipe your eyes. I said this was not going to be a tearjerker, but it may have sparked up some emotions, and that's okay. That's okay. Let that be your indicator that it was an opportunity for you to have that release and have that moment. And then I encourage you to sit back in this time and just kind of maybe reflect. If you're driving in your car, and give yourself a moment. I mean, I know you may have just put on your good eyelashes or your good makeup, and you don't want to mess up your makeup. But give yourself an opportunity to do so. And sometimes on my Sundays when I'm headed to church and I know that it may be a heavy one or I'm dealing with something heavy, I don't put on my eyelashes. I'll put my glasses on, and I know this is about to be a day where I'm about to let it go. And so I want to be able to physically prepare myself to still look well in the moment so that I can be able to have that opportunity to cry. All right. Y'all, that is today's episode, and that is it. If you needed permission to cry today, consider it this. Consider this it. Yeah, that's more like it. Go ahead and let those tears fall. Like, sis, let them go. Have them. Have your way. And when you do, know that you're setting an example for your little girl too. And you're giving her the tools to navigate her own emotional journey. So, thanks for tuning in. And remember, spend time with God because He cares about our cares too. So, until next time, keep thriving. Thanks for tuning in. And I will catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like, and share with a mom or someone that you feel this information would be extremely helpful for. Then head over to Instagram and follow me on my Instagram accounts at Tawana Talks, at TL Collaborative, at Dr. T Wiggins. As always,